The European Renaissance began in the 14th century after the Black Death swept through Europe. This was when a rebirth period started, which changed a lot of social concepts, art, and politics to move away from being church-based and focusing on individual needs. This encouraged a Renaissance humanism movement to spark as people wanted to stray away from the high demands of the church and find a purpose beyond the literal words of the Bible that they were forced to believe. People like Martin Luther were a part of this revolution by forming the Protestant Reformation to spread the idea that people should be able to form their own opinion of what the Bible says versus the church telling them how they have to view the concepts. This allowed for a movement of literature to spike as more people were encouraged to learn to read and were able to read the Bible and other works of literature to educate themselves. Since people were starting to become free-thinking, the Age of Enlightenment began, where people started to question things like themselves, their government, their religion, and the world around them. The Enlightenment was the transition of people believing science over religion when trying to find a reason as to why things were the way they were. A scientific revolution took place where people were fascinated in studying the natural world and the body. People were starting to do experiments to better understand the world they lived in for themselves, versus just believing whatever the Bible told them the reasoning was God-related. This movement caused issues with the Catholic Church as their entire religious system was being questioned and proven wrong. With the Church having power over the European political system and citizens questioning the Church, Europeans were starting to turn against Europe and seek out new land. This sparked the Age of Exploration, which took place within the European Renaissance and the Enlightenment era, which led to the discovery of America. People who wanted to be free of Europe's reign moved to America to seek their own independence. The newly established Americans wanted freedom from Europe, which caused a sense of nationalism to develop, where they believed that they were better than specifically Great Britain, so that they would become their own country without the European political power being placed over them. The Revolutionary War occurred to seek freedom from Europe, which is what was gained when America won the war against the English. With the newfound freedom, America was able to propel itself into the modern world with the Industrial Revolution. With a growing population, Americans realized they needed more machines to produce products faster and in larger quantities. This led to a lot of factories to be opened and farming machines to be made to help produce the larger quantities of products. World War I began when Austria declared war on Serbia over the assassination of Austrian Archduke Franz Ferdinand. These countries seek the alliance of others, which led to the whole world going to war, which eventually ended in 1919 thanks to the Treaty of Versailles. Since being a part of the victory, Americans were flourishing in victory and economics in the 1920s, but that soon ended when the stock market crashed in 1929, which started the Great Depression. Thousands of Americans were losing their jobs, which continued to feed into the downward economic decline. The Great Depression still continued as World War II was starting. The necessity for war items and machines allowed the creation of more factory jobs, which helped end the Great Depression by the end of World War II. Even though World War II had ended, tensions were still high between certain countries. For example, the United States and Soviet Union began to rival, which led to the Cold War. The Cold War lasted for almost 50 years between the two countries, while the Soviet wanted to spread their idea of communism to the world. Since the end of World War II, the United States have continued to involve itself in various conflicts, including the Cold War and the war in Iraq. The perception is the world is moving towards a democratic status, but realistically, there is a growing gap between first and third world countries as imperialism and capitalism rage on.